Okay, we'd like to welcome everybody out to the Fabricator Stage. We have a great presentation on how to identify natural stone. Wonderful presentation by Denise Daniels and Mark Meriaux from Natural Stone Institute and from MB Stone Care. Don't want to miss it. Fabricator Stage. We're going to turn the time over to Mark and Denise. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. And like you said, I'm Mark Meriaux with the Natural Stone Institute, and helping me today, or very instrumental in putting this ID kit together we're going to be using, is Denise Daniels with MB Stone Care.
Good morning.
I'm going to go through a little bit of geology first. We normally do this over an hour, so we're going to really condense that, skip all the intros and background stuff, but I'll talk about some of the geology of natural stone. We'll get right into it. So these slides are borrowed from one of our CEU courses called Natural Stone 101. Natural stone are just that. They're naturally occurring materials that come in their finished state out of the ground. They're not reconstituted, ground up, or manufactured in a plant. They are just polished and finished, naturally occurring minerals. Unlike engineered products, which there's plenty of great ones here, you can see at coverings, which are manufactured and engineered in a plant and produced many times to look and mimic looks of natural stone. So in the natural stone category, there's two main families based on mineral makeup, calcareous and siliceous. So calcareous stones are primarily contain the mineral calcium carbonate, where siliceous stones primarily contain silica or silicate minerals. We've got some samples here. We'll get into this testing kit here in a minute. But then between those two main families, the siliceous and calcareous, there are three methods or three ways that stone forms naturally. One is sedimentary. Come on, clicker. Which is over a period of time, minerals from former biological minerals in the seas settle over time, layer upon layer, year upon year, many, many, many years, and over time that builds up and layer upon layer. The second method of formation is metamorphic. So those previously sedimentary stones undergo additional heat and pressure from the shifting plates of the earth. They get almost to the point of melting where they undergo a metamorphosis, which allows crystals within the stone to grow and form. And then the third method of formation is igneous. Igneous is where the minerals were in a liquid molten state within the earth, and then as they cool, the crystals can grow and they cool into the hard stones that we see around the world. So some of those stone varieties that fall into those categories, you can see on the left side of the slide here, the calcareous and siliceous families, and then the three methods of formation. So all the very common stones like limestone, travertine, onyx, sandstone, marble, slate, quartzite, serpentine, soapstone, argillite, and then granite and basalt are in that igneous side. Next slide.
Somewhere.
In addition to just the mineral makeup and how they're formed, natural stones have a variety of physical characteristics that can play into how they perform in an installed condition. Those characteristics might be absorption, density, compressive strength, abrasion resistance, hardness, flexural strength. If you're getting into like exterior building cladding, things like that, and you've got wind loads and different loads applied to those stones, you want to make sure they'll hold up and perform as you expect them to. Another one common in interior applications, countertop applications, will be that resistance to acid. One of the things we're going to be looking at and testing here with this test kit is a determination of the hardness. So what's on screen now is the Mohs scale of hardness. This is a relative scale of many common minerals, and a lot of times they'll throw in other compositions, some metals, things like that on the bottom to show. Can I move to see the screen? How about that? Sorry, thank you. So it's a relative scale, so it's not a definitive scale where on this scale the number 2 is twice as hard as or 4 is twice as hard as 2, or 6 is twice as hard as 3. From this scale of relative minerals, all we know is that the higher the number, we know that it is harder than and more scratch resistant than the numbers below it. So 6 is harder than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it's not a scale of how much harder it may be. I think it's me with this clicker. It's not. Another characteristic we talked about, I mentioned, is porosity. Porosity and absorption are closely related, but they're not the same. In this photo, you can see this stone has lots of trapped voids within the material, meaning it's very porous, so it has pores within it. But if those pores are not connected, then liquids cannot transmit or move through the stone. So when they are, even on a very, very microscopic layer, when those pores are connected, then you'll see the absorption. So that's the difference. There's a stone, there's actually pumice. Pumice stone is actually extremely porous, but if you take it in a cup of water, there's varieties of pumice that'll actually float because they're so porous, but it doesn't absorb the moisture in. So everybody talks about staining. Staining is more on the absorption side. That's when liquid can penetrate into the material and cause a discoloration or a change in the appearance. Now we're going to get into, let Denise help me out and do some talking and talk about this wonderful kit they've put together.
Okay, so this flow chart, part of it you're seeing here was actually created by Karen Kurt, which is a geologist. We worked with her to create this kit, and it kind of leads you step by step to how to do the test that's going to tell you, at least narrow down what it is you're dealing with. If you're looking for the stone, specifying, working on it, fabricating it, it'll give you all the information you need. So in the kit, we have the picks that give you that number on the Mohs hardness scale. We have some acid here, hydrochloric acid, 10% solution to tell you if it's acid resistant. We added a razor blade to this, and that was because we kept finding things that were coated. So you weren't really testing the stone itself, you were testing whatever was sitting on the surface. So the razor blade kind of, if you run that at a 45-degree angle, it'll tell you if you're dealing with the stone or something on top of the stone. I always struggle with this one, but then my eyesight's not the best. I have to open it all the way up. But it'll tell you about the composition, how tight that is. And then here it tells you kind of what that means as far as quartz and quartzite. That kind of helps with that. The glass is a quick and easy way just to see if the stone is harder or softer than glass. So this kind of gives you a starting point. And then you can get more specific to find out where exactly it falls on that hardness scale.
So on that Mohs hardness scale, where does glass normally sit, number-wise?
Man, why would you ask me that? Now I have to cheat. Ain't it like a 6?
I think it's 6.5, somewhere between a 6 and a 7 many times. So what a piece of glass will do is if you're at a stone yard or if you have stone in your shop, you want to know how hard it is. If it's harder or softer than glass, where it falls on that hardness. Even if you don't have this beautiful test kit, you've got a piece of glass or a glass tile, you can take the sharp edge of the stone.
Yeah, it has to be the sharp
and
like
see
corner.
if it will, a sharp point, sharp corner, if it will scratch glass, that means it's harder than glass.
So it's above a 6.
And it's going to be above a 6. We don't know if it's 7, 8, 9, 10, but we know that it's harder than glass, which means it's probably going to be in that, quartzite family, most likely?
Exactly. So we're going to run through this kind of quickly.
Where are we at time-wise? Yeah, go ahead.
Really quickly. I'm just going to start kind of high. I can't see that number.
So that's the soft one. That's 1, 2. So we're going to skip 1 and 2 because most natural stones are going to fall at least above a 3 in most cases.
So this is a 4.
4.
And these, you don't have to do this. It is like holding a pin and you just run across it. That was a 4. So 5 makes a mark. I'm not sure if you can see that. Can you see that?
It does show up, so you can see it on the TV there, Denise. So what are we seeing?
So that's a 5. So that on our scale then.
The 4 left marks, but I think that's just surface metal.
Yeah. So the 5 actually, you can feel it catch. So you can feel the difference when you run these picks over it. If it just slides across it, that's not it. It's the one that grabs.
So those faint marks on the sides are just residual metal from the pick, where the one I can feel.
But when you can feel it, so that makes
scratch.
that like a 5. And I can't see that.
So on that Mohs hardness scale,
It's right there. Can you see it?
yeah, we're in that range where it could be a serpentine. It's definitely harder, or maybe harder than a marble. It's probably in that serpentine range, because that ranges from 3 to 5 on the
Yeah.
scale that's included with the kit.
So now to narrow that down even more, because serpentine's not going to etch really quickly like a marble would. So this is hydrochloric acid. It's going to run.
Look at that, it's bubbling and fizzing right away.
Immediately starts reacting. And the acid, it reacts with the calcite that's in this stone. And it's an immediate reaction.
So remember when we talked about the 2 main mineral makeups, that means this material is primarily made up of calcium carbonate. And then when I remove that acid, you can see hopefully a very
Yes, you
faint
can.
shadow right at
Yeah.
the tip of my finger.
And that's an etch.
That is an etch. So this is acid sensitive material. Would you want this in your kitchen?
It's in a lot of
Maybe not with a
kitchens.
polished finish.
Yeah.
What could we do though to install this material in a environment
So
where
honed works better, and only because it doesn't show as much. So it's not something you have to, which I always tell people, if you know what you're living with, it's amazing and it's beautiful. You just have to understand what you have. Honed does react better. People don't see it as often. They don't complain about it as often. But even polished, like there's which we make products. There's a bunch of other companies make products. You can fix those little small etches, but once you understand what you have, it's definitely easy to live with.
So we have some other white materials up here. We could test those too. How are we doing on time? We're getting close. We're still good, Blake says. So
Okay.
we've got some materials we can test. I know we've used these before, and we can speed it up because I see some etch marks on here. The white materials don't show up on our camera very well, but these are also acid sensitive. Very generally speaking, the very light, whiter materials are generally going to be composed of that calcium carbonate mineral.
Yes.
So acid test, and this kit is designed to do those 2 primary tests: is the scratch test,
Yes.
and then an acid
That kind of
test.
gives you more of the detailed stuff. I also like to do the water test because I want to see how absorbent it is. I think it's important. If you're fabricating, it's important. If you're doing restoration, it's important. Then you know, like, does it need to be sealed, and how quickly, how much sealer, like what kind of sealer. I think that's an important one. So I actually want to add to this kit and just add a little water cup, basically. So you would put water on it, let it sit for 10 minutes, see how fast it absorbs. It's just an eyeball test of how absorbent it is. It's not going to give you like a scientific number.
You're going to add that into your test kit?
Yes, that's my next thing. I want because it's important.
It may be added in the point. It's not anything you need to purchase in order to test. But I mentioned a lot of white materials are going to be that calcium carbonate. This, for example, will not. This one I know we've tested a few times. There is no visible etching. I don't know if we've even scratched that one, but just to see where that would be on the...
Let's start here. That catches some.
Nope, not yet.
That one does.
That one does. Did
Yeah.
create a little... Again, I
That
know the
is-
white don't show up there for you in the audience, but it
That's
did...
a 7.
So 7. We're between 6 and 7, which is telling us, and it doesn't acid etch, because I know we've abused this one before.
Yeah.
It's tell us it's likely in that granite family. It's going to be a siliceous-based material. It's not calcium carbonate, or else it would bubble and fizz or
Yeah.
react to the acid. Here's another light-colored stone that's going to do that same
Test.
characteristic, a
Yeah.
light-colored stone. That one may be above a 7.
Yep. No 7.
Nothing yet.
That got it.
8 did. So it's up there. This is going to be in that quartzite family. Quartzite will be extremely scratch resistant. It's way up there above the granites.
And should not etch.
Should not etch because it's primarily quartz or silica-based material, silicon calcium, or not calcium carbonate.
Quartzite's probably one of the best ones that this test helps you with, because if it's that hard, but it's acid sensitive, you're not dealing with a quartzite. Quartzite will not etch.
So you guys,
Period.
you guys along with Karen Kirk put this kit together when we were seeing a lot of materials come into the U.S. or into our areas, and they were mislabeled or misrepresented as
Yes.
being sold as one thing, but called another by the slab distributor. And it's not necessarily their fault. They may have been told this information from the quarry because the quarry would cut it. It's harder harder on that Mohs scale than something they would normally cut, and
Yeah.
so that they were classifying it as something that it wasn't.
Or it has some quartz, but the majority of the stone is not quartz.
There are a number of hybrid materials that do demonstrate, that have both. They'll have acid sensitive, soft, scratchable materials, that calcium carbonate based veins, things like fusion,
Yeah.
but it'll also have veins of the quartzitic material in there that'll be extremely scratch resistant.
The dolomitic marbles get confused a lot.
The dolomitic marble would be another one. It is calcium based, but it's magnesium carbonate, so that there's some magnesium in there. It is acid sensitive, but not as acid sensitive as calcium carbonate. So when we put that drop of acid on the dolomitic marble or dolomite, it may not bubble and fizz right away.
No.
So what
And
we
like
need to do
this.
in that instance is take an implement that will scratch it, like a razor blade or a sharper pick, generate a little bit of the dolomite dust on the surface, and then when you
And
place
see if
that
that
acid,
reacts.
it gives it more surface area. Then if it bubbles and fizzes, that tells you it still is in that marble family, but it's a dolomitic marble more than like.
Right, and you have to kind of treat it like a marble, not like a quartzite. Like
Where-
it gets confused with
So
quartzites a
who
lot.
is this kit helpful for, Denise?
In my opinion, everyone. But, I mean, I wish homeowners had these too, but fabricators, stone restoration professionals, people specifying, if you're picking the slabs, like all of that. Designers, if you're trying to choose something that's going to be right for that location, kitchen, bathroom. I think it's all important to understand what you're dealing with all the way around.
And I know you guys don't have a booth here at this show, but where can folks go to get this kit if they're interested in?
Yes, we sell it on our website. It's mbstonepro.com. You can get it there. Of course, you can talk to me. I'm here. I am going to be at the Hyper Grinder booth, which is in the Italian pavilion, I guess, over there. That's where we'll be this week too. So, and I'm there if you want to come talk to me, ask me questions.
Because in addition to this kit, you guys sell a bunch of tooling and equipment for restoration professionals and fabricators.
homeowners, yeah.
And homeowners and fabricators, cleaners.
And we teach classes, and
You guys do. You educate the restoration.
yeah, education is
folks.
probably the biggest thing we do.
So you guys
It's
have always
important.
been strong. I've learned a lot from you and your staff over the years. So anybody that wants to learn more about restoration, tooling, and things like this test kit to identify the different stones that you're seeing come through your shop, you can put one of these together. There's other places you can get these materials.
Yeah.
They've got it all in a nice kit with the instructions to follow. So to really give you a lot of guidance, a lot of information to help you determine what those materials are. I've recommended it to distributors so that they stop the process of just believing the guy before them that told them, hey, this is a quartzite or this is whatever, and then it gets all the way through fabrication and installed, and something is sold as a quartzite, and then it begins to etch. We know that a quartzite's very, very unlikely. I've never seen a true quartzite etch from normal household acids.
No.
It'd be like lab grade, extremely dangerous acids that could etch a natural quartzite. So we want to leave a little time. Anybody have any questions about the test kit or identifying different stones? Anybody have any challenges in your shop identifying stones that we could help out at the Natural Stone Institute or MB?
So if there is a resin coating on some slabs, do you try to scrap it to test, or do you leave the resin which is applied on top of slabs?
So the question was, if there's, and correct me if I'm wrong, if there's a resin coating on the slabs, do you try to scratch through the resin coating to test the slab, or how do you deal with that?
So there's three things that a resin coating will do. So it's generally the stones are just naturally occurring, as I mentioned at the beginning. So there are some loosely bonded minerals in there, and some of them are more tightly bonded together. So sometimes during fabrication and processing, those loose minerals can pick or flake out. So one thing the resin does is help bind those together and create a more uniform surface finish. Can give it a more uniform, glossier, more presentable finish. It does add a little strength. And then the last thing that resins do is they do change the absorption properties at that surface layer. During that resining process, resin is usually applied and allowed to soak in or sometimes vacuum drawn into the surface of the stone, but then the majority of it's removed through the final steps of polishing. So there really is not a topical or coating on top. So it doesn't provide a protective layer against things like scratching or even acid etching. There's still a lot of the natural minerals that are exposed to acids and scratching. So the resin doesn't really affect what we're testing for with this kit.
Yeah,
Anything
you can
else?
also test on the edge too, because that's not really affected. And when I was talking about like, using the razor blade to kind of remove stuff, where we've seen that more is granites that are sealed that don't need to be sealed. Like they're not absorbent. You're just putting something on the top and letting it cure. That's where we've seen more problems arise.
Any other questions about stone?
Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? Because granite that doesn't need to be sealed, what type of problems do you see in that?
Sure.
Yeah, so like absolute black, a true absolute black, it won't absorb water, it won't absorb a staining agent, it won't absorb a sealer. So if you're putting a sealer on and you're letting it cure on the top, you've actually created more problems because the stone is tougher than that sealer you just put on. And so then you've got a sealer that can etch, that will scratch, that will discolor. I mean, so you've actually lessened the value of the stone that's underneath. And a lot of times that sealer's removed, the stone's perfect.
But we all know homeowners want to make sure their stone
They want it
is
sealed. Can you gonna seal this? Are you gonna seal this?
So what you can do, our next session up here, my sealer friend will tell you that the common application for sealer, the proper application for sealer is, the phrase I've been using now is seal to rejection. So what that means is some materials, very thirsty, very absorbent materials, may need to be sealed multiple times. And those between applications require a curing period of time, sometimes hours, sometimes overnight. So it may take 2 or 3 applications of a sealer to get it to be fully effective. But when you put sealer on a material and it beads up or does not soak in or does not discolor, that's the point of rejection, and that's when you know it's correctly sealed.
Yeah, that's why I like the water test. That's why I think it's so important. Because if water sits on this stone for 10 minutes and nothing happens, it doesn't turn darker, nothing is absorbed, it doesn't need to be sealed. It's not absorbing water. It's not going to absorb that sealer.
Any other questions?
So quick clarification, Denise, because you mentioned the water test earlier. So that's what the water test is letting the water sit on the stone for 10 minutes?
Absorbing, yeah. So you can see if it discolors or darkens.
Yeah, so if it turns darker, it's absorbed, and it does need to be sealed. It is absorbent. If it doesn't, you let it sit there, you wipe the water away, there's no mark, you can't tell where it was, it's not absorbent.
Yeah, so your colleague Cameron and others before him many years ago told me a very general guideline is when you see a discoloration in the stone, this is very broad generalization. If it's lighter than the surrounding stone, like here you see a lighter spot, that's going to be an etch.
Yes.
If it's darker than the surrounding stone, then it's likely going to be a stain. So if it darkens or looks wetted, it
Yeah, that's
will be
from
a
our
stain.
care guide.
From your care guide.
Yeah, but Meriaux, actually.
Yeah, it was
Decades ago, yes.
many years ago. Very general, but I haven't seen anything where that doesn't
It proves
hold
to
true.
be true, yep.
It does.
Any other questions for Denise and Mark? Yeah. Anyways, great presentation. Wonderful way to identify stone. We're going to be back here at 11:15. Can we give Mark and Denise a round of applause?
Thank you all. And I will be in
Thank
the
you.
Natural Stone Institute booth for the remainder of the show. We've got another sessions ongoing today and tomorrow on this stage here, but you can come visit me if Denise is walking around or catch her in the hyper grinder booth.
Yeah.
Ask us some questions there. You guys enjoy your day at the show.
Perfect. And
Thank
11:15, Quartzite Revisited is the next one. So going to talk about quartzite and all the problems and all the ways to overcome those problems with quartzite. 11:15. Thank you very much.